Welcome everyone. We have our new episode, and this episode is very important. And this episode, actually, we will discuss on rethinking project management, especially Asia Pacific. Many projects actually happening right now in Asia Pacific. Many construction development happening right now in Asia Pacific. We have our world class peoples and world class analysts, those who can help us to develop strategy, especially they can help us to rethink project management. We have Professor David Smith, we have Mr. Dan, we have Mr. Adam, we have Mr. Kevin Ogba. So I want to start from Professor David Smith. So Professor, you are one of the expert on strategy developments, and already I'm sure that Asia Pacific has different constructions and different kind of development, but somehow for COVID and this kind of economic challenges, there are, I think that we have to rethink about project management. We have to restructure the whole strategy. What your observation, what your analysis, and if you want to give us some interesting presentation, because last of your presentation, many hospitals, they are interested about this kind of solution. Yeah.
Well, project management, as you said, has changed dramatically because of COVID. But then also, project management had changed considerably in the decade before that as well. Uh, Back when the project management, the PMI certification was put in place, most of a project manager's responsibilities were managing a local team and working to make sure that the milestones are met, that the work assignments were done, things like that. But about a decade ago, as the world became more global and as work teams became distributed, that role changed quite a bit, and you begin to see project management moving from a set of tools and techniques that we use to achieve project efficiency to really a more of a holistic discipline used to achieve the project program organization efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation. And that innovation as part of a project manager's role is one of the new nuances that has really changed. And with the COVID changes to project management, the ability to manage the efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation has taken on an additional role that in many companies, the project manager is now one of the holders of the company's culture. They're the ones who's talking with employees, usually on daily basis with stand-ups, project meetings, assignments, and other things like that. So the role has expanded dramatically, and the elements of success have changed as well, from being measured by performance matrix to now more of a multi-dimensional construct where it's managed by how the team reacts, how the team performs, how effective, efficient are they, what innovation is the person helping doing, and how well are the corporate missions and goals and objectives being directed through the project management. And we've seen now that there are maturity models in place, not only for development and execution, but there's now a maturity model in place for project management. And that is, again, one of the other big changes. So the last big change for project management, and COVID made this even more insightful, is in the past, the project manager's role was management. Today's the project manager's role is not only management, but it's also coach. It's also corporate spokesperson. It's also a corporate salesman working through those issues as well. And that is probably one of the biggest changes I've seen with the project managers I work with daily, is that they've taken these additional roles and they've had to, because people are not going into offices. The teams are dispersed. The teams are even more dispersed today than it was a decade ago. Uh, I can tell you our universal tutor product we have teams working in 6 countries on that. And the project management of a task like that becomes increasingly difficult because in some of the countries, the teams are all working out of home. So instead of one video conference link to that site, it's 25 video conferences links to go with another 12 and another 15. So you're seeing the way a project manager has to communicate dramatically scaling up because of all the work from home as well. So those are some of the big changes with project management, both with globalization, COVID, and the retraction we have seen with COVID. But I think that's a pretty good starting point to say project management is in flux, it's changing. And personally, I think it's changing for the good because as project managers have to represent the corporate goals, mission, principles more than just assigning work on a project, it helps achieve greater outputs.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Dan.
Yes, getting things done is always a challenge, and getting them done with rational, intelligent steps is obviously the way to go. There's interesting developments in project management lately because a lot of cultures and organizations are talking about innovation management, and they're doing things like design sprints, and it takes about 3,000 good ideas to come up with one commercial successful idea, is what is usually found out. But that's a definite process that is worth checking out. There was an interesting development in project management about the time that America's President JFK said, "We're going to the moon in 10 years." The first thing NASA said to themselves is, this is going to take about 1 million steps, and they all have to happen in the right sequence and in the right order and in the right time windows. So they actually had to invent an entirely new discipline called critical path analysis. That means there's a critical path through all the steps involved that will actually reach to the end result. And this is something that's worth researching and checking out. Program managers make a lot more than project managers. Just I've noticed that's another little data point in corporate culture. And then there are things in the digital space that enhance project management. The advent of geographic information systems, which I'm a really big proponent of. That's the kind of the Internet of Things, the why of where. There are smart contracts that can be deployed. One interesting one is called a Ulysses contract, and it's named after the story by Homer, the Odyssey, where if you've read that, you know that Ulysses was going by the island that had the sirens, who had an irresistible song, and he had himself tied to the mast so he would not be tempted to be under the thrall of the sirens, which I guess you would just swim toward them and die on the rocks. It was like, that was the problem. You never actually even got to hang out with the sirens. But his crew had their ears plugged. He was tied to the mast. So a Ulysses contract is a way of mandating some future level of performance from yourself. And these can be set up to execute automatically as smart contracts in the blockchain space. So those are just some initial thoughts. Stay tuned to this issue because it's an important one. It's a really good skill to learn. It involves cost-benefit analysis and return on investment. I mean, it's a great management technique. I would encourage people to become conversant with project management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Sharif. So one thing I am really interested in is how we can continue to motivate people to get projects through the pipeline from drawing board to construction and then finishing the project in an economic framework where current or old style financial systems seem outdated or obsolete to, if not just us now, then our descendants in a couple of decades perhaps. I'm not saying we should abandon money or monetary currency, but it's just that if we have this shared vision of a better future for us and when we get older and for our children, we all want to keep our minds open to new possibilities, new ideas for ways of working that have so far impacted quite negatively on particular groups of people. So I like to think, could the same projects that we produce in a fiscally oriented society like today and before going way back also be completed in a new knowledge-based and talent-based economic system? It certainly feels to me that we are coming to the end of certain procedures, or we may have entered the final chapter or penultimate chapter in the history of systems that have been around for a long time because of COVID, obviously, and other reasons, not just the virus. But like I said, I don't think we will jettison the idea of money just yet, because now cashless society has become more of a hot topic, of course, recently. So fiscal systems will still be around for a couple of decades, I think, but will cashless fiscal systems help ease our society into a new economy based around talent economics and knowledge-based ways of doing things? So if we are to go down these kinds of paths, we need to ask ourselves, how will people's, both on an individual level and a collaborative level, how will people's ambitions, motivations, visions, and risk-taking, how all these will be affected and impacted? Thanks, Sharif.
Thank you. Ogba, can you hear me?
Yes, the network is slow, but I can hear you.
Okay. We are discussing on rethink project management. You are one of the initiator of AI in Africa. So how do you want to analyze to this topic?
How do I want to analyze what?
How you want to analyze project management, rethink project management.
Project management depends on how you look at it here in Africa. Most projects are not really properly managed because we lack the technical know-how, and then policy somersault is usually a big problem here in managing projects in Africa. But when you use the technology rightly, projects can be better managed and enhanced. You can see that those who leverage on better technology come out with useful projects. Like, for instance, we have a lot of white elephant projects in Africa that didn't really go down well in the long run because somehow, there was no consistency, and that's why the project failed. But the kind of project we are embarking on right now at the OEC are succeeding because we have struggled to attain some level of digital literacy in all we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor David Smith, I think you can give us a very interesting strategy, especially when everything we want to do just in times and a specific time period, and time is money, even when we work on projects and this kind of things. COVID heavily affect even many projects actually stop because of lack of human resources. On the other hand, modern technology also integrated with these projects. Investment, I want to say, still investors want to invest because at present situations, governments and corporation, they are trying to invest in mega projects. So in that situations, how we can handle this just in time process, or what are the advanced technology we can implement for managing this project?
The answer to your question comes in a couple of different parts. If I'm a project manager in a manufacturing section, I'm balancing different concerns, particularly because of COVID, than if I am in a soft sector like writing software programs. If I'm managing as a project manager in a domain like healthcare, because of COVID, again, I'm balancing different elements to try to make those work. Let me talk about the software domain first, though, because it has some things that have been used for a while that became even more important during COVID than they were before, and they're applicable in the other ones. But things like resource constraints and others crop up more than the other two. Uh, what COVID has done for project management is it's changed many of the sets of tools they use. Um, you used to have a Scrum meeting where everyone got in a room and you went through your materials. Those are all done electronic today. We used to have Scrum meetings and stand-up meetings where they were everyone online at the same time. Those are becoming more and more asynchronous now. Uh, I was looking in Slack at a stand-up meeting we're having this morning before I got online with you, Sharif. And I had my team in Belarus, my Vietnam team, putting stuff in there during the night. Our team in Austin, Dallas, South Carolina, and in Mexico were then reacting to them. And that continues around clock as a stand up as things happen, and they're being done in Slack or other programs like Slack. Um, and so, where a thing was done simultaneously in the past, it's now being done spread over time. And in many ways, the efficiency goes up for the project management of those activities. However, the sense of community and the cultural environment goes down. One of the things that I've seen missing with managing software projects during the COVID era is things like code reviews. Code reviews used to be a group process where 2 developers, 3 developers would sit down in a room, project the code, and talk about the code, ways to improve the code, ways to document the code. Those have become harder and harder because of the asynchronous nature of software development today in doing things. So you have to begin to adapt to those. So we've had to put more automated testing tools in place where they were more human centric in the past because we were using group intelligence and group interaction not only to write better code, but elevate the skills mix for all the people working on that. Those software principles, I believe, will be spreading more now to your traditional manufacturing project managers and to your project managers in the service industries like in healthcare, transportation, and others like that. Um, Innovation has to happen to meet a need, and project management is innovating at this time to meet these changing circumstances and to be able to have both planned project management and instantaneous real-time project management to meet the needs of these distributed teams. And I think that's one of the big changes, Sharif, that we've seen with project management in the last uh, 24 months and will continue to be resolved going forward. I know the teams that we use at our different portfolio companies and our contracts are adapting well to them, even though it's still hard for some of them.
Thank you. Mr. Adam.
Thanks, Sharif. Yeah, when Mr. Kelvin was speaking, I was reminded of just how big certain differences are between projects as we go from place to place, population to population. And it's the issue of inequalities, I suppose, like how we were referencing Japan yesterday. And I remember telling the historic anecdote of Japan after the dropping of the atomic bombs and how quickly, effectively, and completely they managed to rebuild their infrastructure after such devastation. Like a stoic, keep calm and carry on resiliency and anti-fragility, you could say, for an idea from Nicholas Nassim Taleb. So it's we have to obviously rethink the way we do things in terms of project management, but also look back at instance like this and ask ourselves what was the magic ingredient that that helped inspire the Japanese build things after such devastation like that, and is it like a formula or an X factor that we could take around the whole world so that inequalities are bridged and infrastructures are safer for everyone to live in? Thank you.
Mr. Dan.
Sorry.
Well, I can't help but think of one of the current gold standards for implementing projects is Elon Musk with SpaceX, and he's got some great rules and insights on project management. First of all, if a schedule is long, it's wrong, and if it's tight, it's right. It's the best part is no part, and the best process is no process. He also does things like he takes his information in asynchronously. He tries to avoid large meetings. He says, if you're having a meeting, imagine if you had to calculate the value of everyone's time at the meeting, and then you had to write a check for that time, because really that's what's going on. So large meetings, frequent meetings, overuse of acronyms at meetings, because people are going to have to stop and say, what does that acronym mean? And then they're going to look stupid. You're going to alienate people at the meeting. So he's, an amazing guy. I mean, just look at his timetable. He's thinking we're going to be on the moon in a year here again, with his hardware. So, project management is really, I sort of misspoke earlier. It wasn't NASA that invented critical path analysis. That actually goes back to the Manhattan Project, where they knew that every step in the process had dependencies, both of resources and of time, and they had to graph that visually and make sure that all the dependencies were going to be available for each step. It happens in programming too. So I have a friend who's a programmer, and before he writes a program, he gets what's called a user story. He gets a stack of 3x5 cards, and he just interviews the person who wants the program done and says, okay, what's supposed to happen when this happens? And just puts down each step on a card. And with that stack of cards, he can basically go off and write the program. So I think that's kind of a project management approach to programming, at least there. And just some insights. I'll yield the floor for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Ogba. So my question is that, do you think that if AI, different kind of robotics and like this kind of things, when it integrated with project management, it will be more efficient? And if you have some good idea, you can share with our audience. Can you unmute, please?
Yes, I've been having trouble,
Yes.
so I have to change my earpiece. So yes, when you integrate AI into project management, you will get better results. You understand? When you make proper planning. But like my hero would always advise, you don't just sit down and say you have a 10 years goal plan, and then you say you should stand up and do it in 6 months. Obviously, you may fail, but you'll be better off than the man who waits for 10 years. As the system changes, there will be need for you to change. So when you start up something with robotics, for instance, or the IoT, or of things like virtual reality, a proper planning goes, but then you must be ready to continuously change according to the changing paradigm. That's one thing you will get to know when you are in the field. A lot of unseen circumstances you would have to face, and you must change with the changing paradigm. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Pavel, thank you. Thank you for joining today's session. Yes, we are discussing on project management. You are a politicians, young politicians. You have engagement in South Asian politics. But my question is that, how actually in developing nations they are working different kind of. I know that in Bangladesh they have different mega projects. You are also involving with project like Podda Bridge and this kind of things. What's going on inside? What is the real scenario inside country like Bangladesh or India or Pakistan? What your observation?
Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Sharifuddin Ahmed. Bangladesh is a developing country, you all know very well, but recently we are trying to do better than previous. As long as you know, the government is last I think more than 3 times they are on position. So they used to have a very good relation with India. Recently, they are trying to make more good relation with China as well. And you all know very well about Padma Bridge, the big project, one of the biggest bridge in Asia, which is investing the China. China is investing for that, and you all we all know that if one government can sustain for more than 2 times or 3 times, they can develop. But behind that scene, what they're doing, they're trying to make the bridge which need to spend like $100, but they're spending $10,000 instead of $100. So there, behind the scene, there is a corruption. So as a Bangladeshi, I would say, okay, we need to go for the development, but we need to save our money as well. So in Bangladesh, the present government, what they're doing, they're trying to make good relation with China, as well as they're trying to make own money. They're trying to put the money inside their pocket as well. So I would say the government and the body of the government, they should do something which is really good for the people, the mass people. What they want, they need some development and they need some in future. They don't want to pay to the World Bank, or they don't want to be, they don't want any credit. So what do we want? We want a good government, and we need something good really for the people. This government is doing so many corruption. You know, when they started doing the Podda Bridge, the minister, the Mr. Abul Hossain, if I'm not wrong, he used to be the
No, but please, I want to stop you in that point, because that is already solved and already
yes, that is solved. But
World Bank,
what I really
World
want to
Bank
say,
already
the
approached.
baby is going
Yeah.
to be born next day. He's having so many debt on his head. So what I'm trying to say, the government always, this is going to be against the government. There is a different issue. You are really shocked about this matter once you are getting information against the government. But I'm not against that. I'm on behalf
Fact
of
is that
some mass
from
people. I want to give you the real
reality,
scenario, real fact.
no. Okay, but Abul Hossain issues, Dr. Abul Hossain, he was minister that time. He actually removed from the post. But fact is that World Bank thing was wrong, and they apologize for these things. Then they reinvest in many projects, and I think we have experts, they can analyze these things. But we believe that we want to go for open-minded until or unless we cannot say many things. But we are Bangladesh government, we are observing they are taking initiative, different mega projects. Prime Minister office, they are taking initiative against corruptions, especially nuclear
That
power
is right.
plant and different things. Yes, so you cannot deny, because every system has many things. So it's a complex procedure. So right away blaming to the government is very easy, but taking initiative is very difficult. We saw the improvement last 12 to 15 years. That is the reality. Example, country like
what
Bangladesh.
that's what I said. If a government can sustain for 2 or 3 times, then they can do something.
Okay, because okay. So that's why we have our expert panelist. We will learn from them. But fact is that time that blames was not correct, and at the end of the day, Bangladesh government solve these things. They finish the things. Even World Bank do not pay for this, like they do not provide loan to Bangladesh government. So that's why
In that
I
time,
have some
that time.
dispute. Yes, yes, the reality. That is the reality. But it's finished. It's already finished. So, Professor David, this is some sort of complex discussions, because when some mega project discussion come and many developing issues come, there are, like, as you are a policymaker and the strategist, so there are many things come in inside of our discussion. So, Professor, how we can ensure better policy and transparency for projects?
Well, transparency is one of the keys for successful project implementation, particularly when you're working in a public-private partnership of some type.
Mhm.
If you begin to look at the statistics from the International Development Bank, the World Bank, and others like that, um, almost half of their projects end in failure because the primary objectives with which they were funded were not met. And that falls back partially on program management, project management, but that also falls back on the ecosystem that's in place and how the calls are handled. I know in some of the projects we're undertaking right now in developing nations, um, the funding sources traditionally in the past would have routed the funds through the country and then to the people doing the work. What we're beginning to see more and more is a trend of establishing a separate corporation and doing that to alleviate some of the challenges you have with accounting and some of the challenges you have with uh, efforts that are beyond the scope of the original agreement. And I think you're going to see more of that. And again, that falls back into project management, but the governments have to realize that project management has become a more um, challenging ecosystem today. Uh, the uh, MIT Sloan School just put out a new article on the future of work is through the workforce ecosystem. And I sort of put part of that in the private uh, text here. But one of their key findings is the workforce today is both employees and non-employees. And that fact of that it's employees and non-employees is a view of how the science of work has expanded to become that larger ecosystem that we talk about in many things, and about how everything has become a system of systems. And governments have to recognize that work today has evolved to a thing where you're working within a system of systems. And that project management is not just step one, step two, step three, but the managing not only the project, but the interactions you have with that project, with other projects, with the regulations, with the HR requirements, with the financial requirements, as well as managing the workforce you have directly, but even more lately, the workforce that is working with you indirectly, the non-employees. That is the biggest change in project management, and the one that most governments have not stepped up to understand. Most regulatory involvement today looks at your full-time employees. They do not look at the softer non-employees who in many instances are doing the majority of the work. One of the government agencies that I've done work with here, on their main facility, they have 11,000 employees, which is a lot for a big facility. But they also employ in that same facility 37,000 non-employees, contractors as well. So you look at balance that, and you can see that the ecosystem of the non-employees are in many ways are as important as the employees. And again, from a project management standpoint, that is a new change. And from a government regulatory standpoint, that is one that most governments do not understand, even at all levels of nations, from advanced nations to very developing nations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We have our another guest, Dr. Churchill. So how are you, Mr. Churchill? We are discussing on project management, especially we are discussing on good governance and good policy developments. So you are also a politician. What your input for today's discussion?
Well, I think that probably, first of all, very good to see you again. It's been a while. Our busy lives during these times are obviously necessitating that we spend more time on the ground working and less time on the Zoom calls that have seemed to populate our lives. And aside from that, I wanted to suggest that you have a unique opportunity, maybe as you discuss project management, how we can motivate people who are definitely decentralized as of now and very much unable to come into physical contact with each other to partake in the fruits of what we call tribal and communal goal setting and accomplishment. I just feel that this is the right discussion for the right time as we see whole projects that are manifest by very many important nations and people around the world to be failing and to be sort of coming undone at the seams simply because people cannot get to be organized together in a way that they can manage the projected outcomes. So I think, I believe this is a good discussion to have at this moment, and thank you for inviting me. I believe we will have positive outcomes if we understand that our physical need for a chain of command, for a close-up discussion in person in the world, it has been the same today as it has been in the time that we were defending ourselves as a small group, as a small family against the dinosaurs or the large beasts of prey that preyed on the early human beings. We have things that prey upon us today, but the only way to defeat them would be managing the project of our own existence. So thank you, and let's carry on. Be well, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dan.
What's the saying? People don't plan to fail; they fail to plan, and it's really true. I mean, you really could divide the human resource into those with foresight and those who don't use foresight. I think teaching people to use foresight is something that one of your previous guests, James Eade, he has the chess teaching initiative, and just teaching people to play a game like chess is going to give them a foresight kind of mindset. So we do need to develop a culture of foresight and of methodical and evidence-based planning, and it has to start at the top. The people in leadership roles need to be role models for this. They need to make their processes as transparent and as evidence-based as possible, and there has to be continuous feedback loops at every level between asking the question, what are we trying to achieve? What is the whole systems approach? Sometimes people fail to take that whole systems view of problem solving. They might get hung up on one little narrow part of it. It's kind of like when computers were first coming out. A common question is, what's the best computer to buy? And Stuart Brand said, no, that's the wrong question. He said, what am I trying to do? What is the best software that accomplishes what I'm trying to do? And then what's the best machine for running that software? So it's kind of, working the problem, from a systems kind of blank page kind of viewpoint is going to be beneficial. And like I said, we need to inculcate that in our education systems and our cultural systems. We're doing an okay job, but we could do better. Thanks.
Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Sharif. So earlier I was talking about Japan, and I was just thinking in my mind, what is the secret ingredient or X factor that we could bottle, if you like, that we can take around the world? So if we can compile the knowledge learned from the most dramatic infrastructure repair and societal comebacks after incidents of devastation like the aforementioned atomic bomb drops on Japan, 9/11 with the Twin Towers, the speed at which modern China is being continuously built up, so on and so forth. It's a kind of digital project management library where people can collaborate, communicate, cross-pollinate remotely or in person, which is an advantage afforded to us by digital communication, obviously. Because the way I see it, the accidental mismanagement of a large project in New York, say, for example, that would have posed a risk to many lives if left unchecked, could potentially be isolated and fixed just in time by someone talented enough to see that, who lives in a nation on a completely different continent, like in China. That is what I meant by cross-pollinating, the cross-pollination of disciplines and skills. And of course, as I said, e-business, e-learning, e-collaboration affords these kinds of advantages to those working in these fields. And speaking of technology and construction hazards, virtual reality will afford workers, engineers, and architects, and so on, to simulate and model potential hazards in a project within a more intuitive and immersive sensorium. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Pavel, can you hear me? From your
Yes,
point
I'm
of
having
view.
some problem here though, but still
Okay,
is
okay.
okay.
Okay. As you are a politician, how we can develop better policy for managing this kind of mega projects? What is your observation? How we can develop better policy, country like Bangladesh?
Well, on the first part, I said something,
Pavel, can you hear me?
and I would like to say something positive as well. As long as I'm a Bangladeshi, and I would like to see my country in a different place in the world. And we are doing better, that's true. And we have to do more. We are having so many big projects in Bangladesh right now. I have said about the Padma Setu, Padma Bridge already, and another project is going on in Dhaka City, which is Metro Rail, which is a big project. As we all know about, most of them will know that in Dhaka City there is loads of traffic jam, and for that, as long as we are not decentralized Dhaka, all the offices for Bangladesh in the Dhaka, all the offices in Dhaka city. So we used to have a lot of problem of traffic jam. Now for it's a big project, metro rail project. It's almost done. Maybe from the next year, 2022, they are going to start the metro rail, and from that we will have a different Dhaka city, and from that we'll get less traffic in Dhaka city, so people can save their time. And after that, I would like to say there is a big project is going on in Chittagong, which is the second capital, we can say, for the Bangladesh. It's a business city, the biggest port in Chittagong, the best port city, we can say. So there is a big tunnel work is going on under was the river Nema. There's a river, and they're working for the tunnel. And if we can make this tunnel, after that we can connect some people which is the other side of that river. So business work will be in big position. And there is a big issue for Chittagong because China, USA, India, they all want to use this port. So if you get this project done, and then we can do something more better. And we all know that if we can do better in business, then we can develop our country. And some other country people will invest more in Bangladesh. And we need to be more honest. I would like to say we are still trying. For Bangladeshi people, they are trying, as we know. So we got this country after a freedom fight in 1971. Nobody gave this country to us. We fought against Pakistan on that 1971, and then we got it. We are just just a 50 years old country, and within these 50 years, we are doing better. You know, in 1971, President Ziaur Rahman, who announced for the liberation war, and that time people they started the liberation war against Pakistan. So I would say after 50 years of this country, we're in better position right now. So we are doing in the right track. We are doing in the right track. We need to be see. We need to see some more investment in Bangladesh. So these Padma Breeze, once it's done, the other part people of this country they will be connected to the city of Dhaka, and that time the other people from the other side of this country they will be connected very well with the Dhaka city, and they can do business easily at that time. And the other port city is Mongla Paira Bandar, that call, and that will be connected very well. So I would say we have to focus on education as well, because the generation now we are almost 100% educated right now. So this is my observation. We have to be more educated, we need to be more honest, and we need to go for more international good relation than people. The other country that will invest in Bangladesh once we are good in business, once we are good in economically, then we can do better in Bangladesh. And we are having some projects going on in Bangladesh. And once it's done, after 1 year, the bridge, and after 1 year, the metro rail work will finish. So we are trying. We are trying to be more good, as long as we are third world countries, one of the third world countries. So we have to think this as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Pavel.
think
Dr.
I
Churchill,
think
yes.
it's good to say that you are a very fast developing nation. You are not a third world. We've gone away from the concept of third world. Seemingly, I think we all share the idea that we are all one world, and there is no first, second, and third. No more classifications of any kind, except that some people
Thank you.
are on there, and some decent progress is being made. Country. I know personally, experience, you are much faster in progress through project development than many of the advanced countries that we consider fully developed.
Thank you,
It's
Dr.
something
Churchill.
something to be proud of. It's something to recognize, so others can take the same route that you have chosen, and it seems to be working for you. I'm very pleased to say.
Thank you. Professor David Smith. Well, like as Mr. Pavel actually brings some of the important development in South Asia, and I think this is the part of even Belt and Road Initiative. Belt and Road Initiative actually moving very fast. I think around Asia, Europe, and other countries. On the other hand, USA has their own strategy, Indo-Pacific door. USA also try to engage with this kind Indo-Pacific business strategy. On the other hand, we are just observing the Afghan issues. This is actually another humanitarian issues and human crisis. What do you think? What is the actually world strategy movings? What do you think about USA-China relationship, this Belt and Road Initiative? What will be the global progressions?
Geopolitical relationships are what if I could go to Monte Carlo or to Las Vegas and understand them in great deal. I could make a lot of money winning in gambling too. The problem you have with those relationships is there are so many transgental elements that are involved with it. It's really hard to bring them into any methodology to make things begin to work in order. When countries were primarily looking inside their own border, imagining inside their own border, there were still many, many challenges. Now on the global scale, where communications are ubiquitous. Digitalization is becoming ubiquitous. Decisions are made in real time. It's gotten complicated. One of the things I love to tell politicians is that location is no longer a point on a map. Location is no longer just a city. Location is where you find the right competencies and capabilities and resources to produce the things you need to produce, to affect the change that you need to play. COVID actually, in the initiatives you've talked about, Sharif, others like that, have helped illustrate that even more. I mean, the world has come together around really fewer than 10 vaccines to use to begin to combat this. And the project management and government coordination and government project management is what has been really stretched to do this. COVID has brought us back a return of big projects that the government is organizing. And many have done very poorly with it. Very, very poorly.
Rudy, can you
It's
please
because
call
it's the
101?
broader
Rudy, call
ecosystem
101.
that we're trying to deal with across all the elements there. My advice to you on that one is in many instances, as we're managing the projects across Asia, across Europe, across the United States, and in the Southern Hemisphere, is we have to think locally, but we have to act globally. We have to think within the niche we're managing, but we also have to think across the ecosystem that is being impacted by what we're managing. We have to think of the ones we directly control, like our employees, but we also have to think beyond the employees to the other non-employees who are working on it. And in a nation state, we have to think of our citizens, but then we have to think of the global impacts of what we're doing. And that really creates a very complicated set of stakeholders for any project management to run, whether it's a commercial company, whether it's scientists trying to manage a large scale project, or whether it is the government trying to do things, or whether it's a global organization like the United Nations or others, the World Bank, others trying to manage projects at scale like that. So it is a complex problem, and it takes complex systems to solve complex problems.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Dr. Chatterjee, you want to add any point? Yes.
Unmute.
Unmute, please. Dr. Churchill, unmute, please. Unmute, please.
I
Go
am
ahead.
now. Thank you much. Somehow the internet, befuddles all of us with its speed or its slowness. Same like project management. I very much appreciate the keen insight that you bring, Professor Smith, as well as Dr. Dan, whom I have seen before here, I believe, and I always see his keen insight. Stuart Brand, in the olden days, used to be a friend of mine when I was in San Francisco. I haven't seen him for a long time, but I used to give speeches at this long-term now cafe down at near Fort Mason. Does that thing still exist? Is he still around? Do you know?
He's pretty active with the Long Now Foundation these days, I believe.
So he still goes to the cafe where they have the speeches and the conferences upstairs?
Oh, I don't know where he's living. I assume he's still up in the Bay Area, but
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah, he's
May
one
I
of
ask,
my heroes.
where are you, Dan? Where do you live?
Oh, I'm in Ventura County in California,
Cool.
Thousand Oaks.
And thank you. And Professor Smith, where are you located physically?
Physically, I'm in Austin, Texas today.
Well,
But
excellent.
I travel way too much.
Do you ever go to Seattle in the rainforest
Oh,
of
I
the
do. I do. We
Pacific?
actually, my company, we own a company in Seattle.
And what is your company in Seattle?
It's an AI company.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very much looking forward to see you in person someday. But are you also based in the Bay Area at some point?
We travel there often. In the last 3 weeks, I've been in Dallas. I've been in the Carolinas. I've been in the Dakotas.
Well, very
Uh,
good. So,
and
what I recognize by this is that we are such a dispersed group of thinkers and certainly, doers, that we understand that even, this project that we are getting together to share intelligence can be quite complex. I want to liken this discussion to the development of the vaccines. The vaccines, they were developed in this decentralized fashion. But when it came time to do laboratory work and to actually do the real element, they people and the scientists, they had to come together in their own specific labs, whether it be in Oxford, whether it be in any place of the world, in order in Cambridge to create the vaccines in and of themselves. So the fact that we were able to share the genetic code, of the virus in the beginning globally, it was the preamble to the actual physical existence of the scientific community. And this is what I wanted to say the same here now of the failures and the successes of project management. Somebody, I believe it was Sharif, who introduced the idea of Afghanistan being a failed project management, case study that I presume will be studied forward for very many years from now on. Imagine that you have a project which could be simply termed nation building, and perhaps even go as far as saying a fairly open and democratic liberal nation building that's been going on for more than 20 years, and the outcome today is a dismal failure after the shedding of so much blood, close to 500,000 lives from all sides, maybe even more, wasting trillions upon trillions of US dollars and other currencies, a multinational effort of very many armies from very many countries getting involved in solving a problem which is very much, some people would say, like a virus. It is a viral, ideological effort to disrupt the process of equality, justice for women and children, justice for all the people, and disrupt the process of having an open and democratic society taking hold in this difficult country. So I would say, this is a best case scenario for us to learn. And as we look back to say, what happened in this project that became unraveled after so much effort, after so much wasting lives and wasting, literally, I believe more than $3 or $4 trillion in global wealth that evaporated literally. And look who benefited. So this is what I always look for. If you're going to find out, the project failure of such a large scale, why it failed, you should look out who benefits from the failure. Just before that, we spoke about the Belt and Road Initiative, which is also a multi-trillion-dollar effort. As of now, China has spent close to 1 trillion on that, literally 900 billion in loans from China Development Bank to the various countries that they have embraced this particular initiative, and they have chosen to have projects done in their own land. And then you look at that as being, projected at the end to be almost 20 trillion, maybe even more. Now, these are very big numbers, and they involve also a lot of effort. This, again, is a multilateral project that needs to be managed in a decentralized fashion, and maybe be managed, not from Beijing, but rather from other sources. And yet, you will recognize in this also that there is a great possibility of failure because there are other competing interests. I do not. I believe it was Sharif or Professor Smith who mentioned that the United States has an opposite view to that. They want another competing global project to replace the Belt and Road Initiative. And I think, the way that the State Department does these things, in a bureaucratic language, is a big marketing failure because they call it Build Back Better. Imagine 3B, like the Better Business Bureau. And of course, this is bureaucratic speak that it means nothing. Or does it mean to build back better when there are projects that have never been built? However, the point is that there is a competing interest, very much like the competing interest in Afghanistan, that wants to unravel this particular project in favor of uh, uh, another form of development that is more uh, capitalist centric, more free liberal economy centric, as opposed to being led by a communist country that has a viral ideology that believes that the world should be managed in an authoritarian and tyrannical way.
Mm.
So these competing interests, they come to us to recognize that every project also has a shadow side, no matter
Mhm.
how big or how small, especially transnational projects, projects that involve, 190 countries, as is the case with the Belt and Road Initiative. I believe almost 129 countries have already signed some form of an understanding with China, a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, about being participating in some fashion in this project, only because they believe that there would be a windfall, a lot of money, coming in and development and such. And I look at that and I look on the opposing aspect of it. The European Bank of Development also has some ideas. The American Development Bank, obviously, as you well know, whether it be Import-Export Bank or it be any other, a remnant of the Marshall Plan and very many other initiatives, guided by the State Department, they recognize the need to have other type of projects that are better managed. They are not such great products of bureaucratic empire thinking as the one by China, and they are probably things that can be done within our own lifetimes, as opposed to be these great things that the Middle Kingdom of China has decided that are necessary for the world in order to export their products, their ideology, and their system of governance. So I bring to you a question after this long introduction, and the question is, when you look at project management and what do these people who do such great projects bring to the world, would it be another form of a viral infection like the coronavirus of Wuhan, that a lot of people consider it to be a biological weapon out of the laboratory in China, or would it be similar to that, the communistic ideology of command and control from a centralized, small power residing in the forbidden city of Beijing? That's one option. And then you have another option. You have the multiplicity, the opportunity of free people under liberal democratic solutions and governance, that they choose what projects they do by themselves, and then they organize them within the society of nations as a positive aspect for all of us. So I see these two as two competing projects, and the management of each one of them will necessitate a victory for one system or another. I should not want to ever consider that there would be a reliance on a totalitarian system, because we've seen what happened when the fascist nations of Italy, Germany, and Japan, just before the Second World, they tried to organize the world in the same fashion via conquest, via terror, via bloodshed, and the incredible power of their weapons and their armies. And I think the outcome was not positive for any of us. And yet today we see the same thing happening. And perhaps I want to say that let's be aware and let's open up our eyes, because this type of benign seemingly development across the world of the Belt and Road Initiative might carry with it another virus, which could be the totalitarian system of communist ideology that wants to suppress the individual and destroy any kind of liberty that we have as human beings. And that I would consider to be the reality of the projects. We can learn a lot from Afghanistan and the failure of Afghanistan. And you will see within the failure of Afghanistan that the finger of China is very visible in destroying the progress that was made in the last 20 years today. How do you think the Taliban are being financed, supported, and having this incredible wealth of paying salaries to each individual who is involved in this that are 10 times greater than what each individual soldier of the Afghan army, the official army, was being paid at? Of course, if you are given a choice to have 10 times the salary, you might join the Taliban as well, as opposed to joining the regular army. And that speaks volumes. So when we are looking at the Belt and Road Initiative, you will see that one thing that China does today is corrupting all the leadership and very many of the tribal people around the world, and I mean tribal in governments in Africa and other places, to which friends and family of the governing persons, they enjoy tremendous benefit of wealth. And you will see that they are being corrupted openly and clearly with a lot of money in order to engage in these projects that will tie their countries into the carriage of China for very many years. However, when you look at the United States, we do not have the capacity to offer this kind of inducements, this kind of bribery, if you will, to officials and other development agents around the world, because it's strictly forbidden by the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and also by the ethics of an open and liberal democracy. And therefore, perhaps we are not getting as much traction for our own projects in the United States and globally today. However, we must consider that doing the right thing is a far more difficult proposition at times for the short term, but for the long term, it's the far more successful way of doing business transnationally, nationally, or in any other way that we consider as ethical and certainly long-term successful project management for the benefit of all the people, not just very few at the top. Because as George Orwell have told us within this amazing, book of his, you remember the Animal Farm. As you might remember this game before 1984, the other pivotal book of his, into which he showed how within the communistic ideology applied in a small animal farm, well, you know what the pig said, some of us are more equal than others. So I leave you with that thought.
Thank you. We are in a concluding stage. So, Mr. Adam, what's your thoughts? And then, Mr. Dan. Mr. Adam.
Are these the closing comments?
Yes, closing
okay.
comment, and you can add your analysis based on Mr. Churchill's and other speakers.
Excellent, thank you. I am quite interested to know whether a transition to a talent-focused economy and a knowledge-based way of working will affect the grandiosity of projects. And grandiosity and excess are characteristics, as well as arrogance, which follow excess, and grandiosity, which are inseparable from fiscally based societies where gaps and discord are part of the course of pyramid-shaped hierarchies in capitalist society. And of course, this gives people the audacity to try and cut corners and sweep mismanagement and corruption under the rug. And that is how mistakes are made or covered up. And that puts people's lives at risk. So if we go from cash to cashless, to then a situation where we rely less on monetary exchange and more on knowledge and talent collaboration, will this help solve the issues of corruption and bribery? Will it make these potentially worse by way of some weird, unforeseen circumstances? And as Dr. Churchill was speaking, he reminded me of the issue of modern-day slavery. And surely that is something I hope can be left behind along with corruption, bribery, money laundering, and so on. If we eventually reach not only a post-cash society, but after that as well, in a post-cashless society, which I know is controversial, but by then I hope we have the necessary wisdom to live well in a post-cashless society that values knowledge and talent the most, unless, like I said, there are some unforeseen circumstances I have overlooked. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Mr. Dan.
Okay, had to unmute there. Yeah, important talk. I hope we can keep touching on these things. There's an idea of something called a mind virus, and it's getting more and more viral thanks to the digital ecosystem. I think there are a couple of mind viruses that immediately stand out. One is some people call it the cop in the head. We have this over reliance that there's some authority or some engineer that's going to take care of it for us. I think it's like an over reliance on external authority when we really need to reclaim our mental power back from that kind of mind virus thinking. And the other mind virus is thinking that if you get the most toys, then you win. An overly materialistic, acquisitive mindset. So I think when you couple that reliance on authority mind virus and that overly materialistic, acquisitive mind virus, you get a really dangerous combination. And it seems to be most of what the so-called West is offering the world, and I think that's going to have to be addressed at the individual level. There's an interesting new technology, relatively new, I want to briefly touch on. It's called a POAP token, and POAP is Proof of Attendance Protocol. It's something that has been deployed on the Ethereum blockchain, and for now, it's an open source, free way to get a souvenir. It's like the bookmarks of your life. You can show where you've been in the online world, and I think there's about 80,000 of these users of these tokens now. But I think as it develops, it's kind of like the power of bragging rights. Sometimes bragging rights is more valuable to people than money or stuff. It's like the people that go on this hike across the desert, they get a belt buckle that says they did it. And it's like, well, that's a worthless. No, but it's the bragging rights. It's like I did this, 3-day trek across the Mojave. And so don't underestimate the power of bragging rights. And these are verifiable bragging rights. So that's kind of interesting. It's not going to be pretty immune to corruption and faking of these things. So that's really a basis for a talent economy, is people creating systems with these POAP tokens, these badges that show what they participated in. And I'm going to be trying to pursue that. And I know we're short of time, so I'll leave it there. Thanks again for letting me participate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Pavel, what's your concluding remarks today?
I'm sorry, I was having some earphone problem at that time. So if you don't mind to ask me the question, if you don't mind, please. Because I was having some problem with the hearing.
Yes. What's your concluding remarks today? Yes.
Oh, today's concluding is that I would say you all are in first world country. We are in the third world country, I would say, and we are doing very good after 50 years of this country. So let's hope for a very good Bangladesh in front of the world. And I hope within 10 to 15 years, we'll be in very good position in the world, because people are more educated than previous time, and poverty almost solved in this country. So I hope we can do better, and please wish for good luck for us, please.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. This is very good discussions, and hopefully we will get some meaningful discussion in the futures. Thank you, Dr. Churchill.
My last words as well, since
just
concluded.
30 seconds. Yes, 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds. I wanted to first of all remind every one of us that the learnings that we take away from here every time that we come together in community, they're extremely important, because I shape your mind the same as you shape my mind, and for that we can be grateful to Sharif for organizing the conference. And let us go forth from here remembering that if you can impact others in the world same as you do, this is the medium. The medium is human voice communication, because this is what I call the killer app. Human voice, whether it comes through here or through Zoom or through telephone or in person. But the actuality of delivering results is when we have the full mind melt that we come together in vivo, in person, alive, speaker to one another. So I want to hope that in the near term we are going to have live conferences again, where we can come together and coalesce as a community, as a brotherhood. And I would like to be invited and reminded that in Dhaka,
yes, we will arrange it.
I have been before. Evening, I promise I will fly there. Thank you and God bless.
Sure. We will
and
arrange
we will
it.
institute the idea that there is no third world. We are going to get there as a world in one, in unison.
Yes.
Developing and advanced. Thank you.
Thank you. But definitely, World Talent Economy Forum, we believe in modern science, modern engineering, and technology. Definitely, I request everyone, please go for the vaccinations. We do not have any kind of objection about that. Even we have many evidence-based research paper, and whatever we will do based on better policy, better science,
We
and
have
better
all been
engineering.
vaccinated, I'm certain, and we get our COVID certificates. I fly in and out all the time, and I can assure you, it is time now
Okay.
to start coming together in person as well. So, Sharif, please organize something in Malaysia in person. We'll be there. It is time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Bye
we'll
bye
see you
and
next
take care.
time.
Bye bye and take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.